We're going to talk about the formation of bones in the body, and this is what occurs during embryonic development. And we have two different mechanisms. So the first one is less common than the second one, and it's referred to as intramembranous ossification. So I'll put that it is less common, and it occurs in flat bones. It also involves the ossification of embryonic connective tissue that is called mesenchyme. So mesenchyme is unspecialized connective tissue that can become any type of connective tissue, but it is going to form into specifically flat bones where we have bone tissue, compact bone tissue, and then between this compact bone tissue, we have what is referred to as spongy bone. So our skull bones, for example, have this formation. So I'm just drawing this so that there's spaces in between here. So on the outside, we have compact bone. So let me change the color here, to a green. Okay, so we have compact bone on either side. And then in the middle, we have what is called spongy bone. So that is the structure of flat bones. So this would include the skull bones that also, like, for example, the sternum would also be in this, this category of flat bones. The next type of formation is what is referred to as, the second type is referred to as endochondral ossification, or endochondral, chondral ossification. So this actually takes place inside the cartilage, so endochondral. And so this is what happens in most bones. So what happens in most bones? This is where we have a hyaline cartilage model. And this model looks a lot like the bone. So like, for example, the humerus. And then what's going to happen is that this is going to become ossified. So it starts out early in the embryo as actually cartilage. So this is tissue that becomes ossified. And what that means, it's replaced by osteocytes, and it's also replaced by a matrix, which is mineralized. So we talked about the calcium phosphate in the matrix. So it becomes ossified. So let's look at a diagram that shows this process. So this actually shows down here a fetus. And so you can see that the bones are becoming ossified. So we see that they're becoming calcified in different areas. Notice that there's like this big space, interestingly, here, which would be the carpal bones. And we can see the rib cage and the vertebral column and the skull bones. So this is at 12 weeks. And so what begins to happen is that these bones start to become ossified. So here in the diaphysis, which is the long part of the long bone, right? So the shaft of the long bone, we get calcification. And this calcification actually causes the chondrocytes to die. And those chondrocytes die and they need to be replaced by osteocytes. And in order to get osteocytes into the bone, we have the formation of a nutrient artery. So this delivers cells that are going to become bone cells or osteocytes. So the shaft of the long bone is where we have the primary ossification center. And then this is actually eventually going to form a cavity, which we talked about as being the medullary cavity, which can either be filled with, in young people, in children, filled with red bone marrow, or it can become filled with yellow bone marrow in adults. We also have a secondary ossification in the epiphyses. So the ends of the bones, we get a secondary location of ossification right here. But something really interesting happens in that in this particular area, we get what is called the epiphyseal plate. So the epiphyseal plate is what we call the growth plate. And this is where the cells are going to divide and proliferate and undergo mitosis. And during growth of the fetus and also the children, this is where the bone is going to elongate from. And so we can always tell in a X-ray whether or not somebody has finished growing or not, because we can see this epiphyseal plate in an X-ray. So this, when we talk about endochondral ossification, this is related to the remnant of the hyaline cartilage. So a remnant of hyaline cartilage becomes the epiphyseal plate or the growth plate. So that is sometimes commonly referred to as the growth plate. So we'll talk about the elongation of bones next.